Imagine if we went back in time and gave an NFL team a cheat sheet for the draft, telling them exactly who the best players are in the position they are drafting for the first and second rounds, occasionally giving them a little nudge when it comes to free agency and who they shouldn't let go. What would those teams look like now if they were able to always play the draft perfectly? That's what I'm here to try and answer. So we're looking at the Giants, a team recently more known for hitting some home runs in free agency, but what would this team look like with those free agents and a perfectly drafted roster? Let's find out. So we start at left tackle, and straight away in 2015 with the 9th overall selection, the New York Giants selected Ereck Flowers. And now Flowers probably isn't the long-term answer, but when you consider the class and who else was available, he pretty much was the correct pick. Then on to left guard. In 2013 with the 19th overall selection, the Giants selected Justin Pugh at offensive tackle / can play guard / can play center / can play anywhere. That was the correct pick. There were some good players in that draft, but he was certainly the correct pick for the Giants. Then on to center. In 2014 with the 43rd overall pick, the Giants selected Weston Richburg at center, and again that was the correct pick. Never have we started with 3 drafted players in any of these episodes, but we have it here with the Giants, and they were correct on all of their picks. Ereck Flowers, of course, not the best left tackle in the league by any stretch, however was the correct pick for the year they were picking in, so they did pretty well. Onto the right guard position, it's John Jerry. Then to finish off, we have Bobby Hart at right tackle, and that's really as good as we can do there. For the tight end, we have Will Tye. I do like Will Tye. I think he's going to be one of the guys to watch over the next few years. And then we move on to the wide receivers, recently reinforced through free agency. So starting off, our number 1 wide receiver in 2014 with the 12th overall pick, the Giants selected Odell Beckham Jr. It was a very strong draft class of wide receivers. You pretty much couldn't go wrong whoever you picked. Odell Beckham Jr., of course, the correct pick for the Giants. Then our second wide receiver, recent free agent signing, big name free agent signing, Brandon Marshall. And then in the slot we have last year's rookie signing, Sterling Shepard. But it gets better. In 2012 with the 63rd overall pick, the Giants selected Ruben Randall at wide receiver. They could have had Mohamed Sanu, and it's already been talked about as a very strong wide receiver group. It just got a little bit stronger with that change of history, but let's put Sterling Shepard back into that slot position. And now we can move on to the running backs. At running back in 2012 with the 32nd overall pick, the Giants selected David Wilson at running back. They could have selected Lamar Miller, and then onto the quarterback position, of course, it's Eli Manning, and that is the offense completed. Pretty much just the Giants offense, except for the fact they got Mohamed Sanu and Lamar Miller there as well. Of course, Lamar Miller is a serious upgrade for them. Mohamed Sanu obviously is a ridiculous amount of depth for them, but that offensive line is still the same, and the problems for them still are at the 2 tackle position. So let's move on to the Giants' strength, the defense. We start at free safety with a rookie from last year. It's Andrew Adams. We move over to strong safety. Landon Collins, still probably my vote for defensive player of the year. Then on to the linebackers, which is, of course, pretty much the Achilles heel of the Giants. At right outside linebacker, Jonathan Casillas. At left outside linebacker, Devin Kennard. And then at middle linebacker, I've got Keenan Robinson here, but it could also be Kelvin Shepard, depending which way they decide to go. But Keenan Robinson was recently re-signed, so why not have him here? And that is still pretty weak. Of course, they look okay here in Ultimate Team form, but obviously not a great group of linebackers. You can't really deny it if you're a Giants fan. However, the rest of the defense is strong enough to make up for any possible weakness they have there. Let's move on to the cornerbacks. Our number 1 cornerback in 2011 with the 19th overall pick, the Giants selected Prince Amukamara, and now we know how this goes. It's 2011, it's not Patrick Peterson. You could have had Richard Sherman. Onto our number 2 cornerback, and I'll explain my order in a second. We have Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and Janoris Jenkins in the nickel. Now that's not in terms of number 1, 2, and 3, but rather I think Janoris Jenkins, out of all of these guys, can handle himself best in the nickel. That's why I have him here. And of course, you've still got Eli Apple on top of these 3 guys as well. So now let's move on to the defensive line. Of course, a strength for the Giants. We start with Jason Pierre-Paul. Next, we have Olivier Vernon, and we've been swapping him in a couple of teams as well. And now we move on to the defensive tackles. In 2013, with the 49th overall pick, the Giants selected Jonathan Hankins at defensive tackle. That was the correct pick. And in 2011, with the 52nd overall pick, the Giants selected Marvin Austin at defensive tackle. That man could have been Jarrell Casey, and of course, on top of that, they already have Damon Harrison on the team. Of course, if you had Jarrell Casey, they wouldn't even need to think about re-signing Hankins, which of course they have not done yet. But these are the New York Giants if they'd always drafted perfectly. pretty much no changes to the linebackers, and I've said this for a bunch of teams. Maybe if you haven't drafted someone in that position in the first 2 rounds for the last 5 years, there's no surprise it's a weak position, and you kind of deserve the fact it's a weak position, but you also can't really question them because they did put a lot of resources in the draft into the offensive line. They have tried to strengthen a weakness for them. It's not gone right with Eric Flowers, but it went very right with Weston Richburg and Justin Pugh. A couple more drafts like that, and they'll have as strong as an offensive line as they have a defensive line. And then really the only question there is Eli Manning headed for a 3rd Super Bowl in his career?